Well, hello, Pon. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to uh, have this conversation with me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Glad to be here. Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
yeah, thank you. Um, in looking at your really just impressive, incredible career and all the movies that you worked on as an animator, ranging from Horton Hears a Who to The Amazing Spider-Man to Alice in Wonderland, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, the list goes on and on. Um, when you reflect on all of your decades in and years in the field and your ability to breathe life into characters, do you feel like that has impacted the way you observe people in your day-to-day life?
Um, yes, absolutely. That is, I feel like once you learn how to animate, after that, what separates you is what you're able to inject into the characters that makes them feel unique and alive, and that all comes from observation. And when I was in school, in art school and film school, we sketch a lot, and the purpose was always never to get details. It was always a gesture. It was always just looking at somebody and just being able to capture kind of what they're feeling and what they're kind of just what they're about with just the simplest little drawing. And that's the same principle when animate, which is that once you learn the mechanics of animation and the principles and how to make things move believably, after that you want to make people forget that they're looking at like a computer generated image. You want to if you're animating an animal, you want people to think that they're looking at an animal, and this is all observation and this is why even after almost going on 20 years now of animation, I when I'm working on a shot, the first thing I do is I will look at reference. I'll go online and like YouTube is an animator's best friend. Like I will spend an entire day just looking at YouTube videos, just trying to find the right gesture or the right emotion that I want to kind of breathe into whatever character I'm animating. And it's also I will act out, I'll be my own reference. And so another thing that we get comfortable with is being in front of the camera and um, just be able to, because it doesn't matter how long you've been animating, it's just you're gonna miss something. And I used to think that like when you after with enough experience, you don't want to have to like copy reference anymore. You won't have to find the reference. You're just gonna have it in your library, in your mind, because you've been doing it for so long. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. The most the most seasoned pros I know, they rely so heavily on reference, and this is where you kind of separate yourself from the rest. Is that you use a reference as a base, but then you kind of inject your own flavor into it. But when those things work together and it balances out, that's when you get a great piece of animation and something that's unique, that is just really interesting to look at. And I think for sure, go back to your question, is that all I do is observe. All I do is look at people. I go to a coffee shop, I just look at the barista, I look at the people waiting. I go outside, I see people walking, I see how an older woman walks compared to a little kid, compared to like a 20-year-old man. So these little things that everybody kind of does the same thing, but they have their own little way of doing things. And you have to kind of, it's not to it's just for me to know that these things exist, so that whenever my work calls for it, I can kind of like, oh, I remember seeing this guy that was eating the sandwich. It was so interesting, and it's just kind of like it lets you kind of explore options, and you kind of when you think of ideas, you kind of just have more to kind of like draw from. But it's yeah, animation is observing. I would say it's such a huge part of the job for sure.
That's so interesting. Can we like zoom into maybe one of those observations? Let's say you're at a coffee shop and you're seeing somebody eat a sandwich and you're like,
Mhm.
wow, that's really interesting. Now, walk us through what, first of all, what points to something as being interesting? Can you find something interesting in any observation, or did something strike you about, was he acting in a way or behaving in a way that was somewhat, out of the norm? Like, what are you honing in on as you're making those observations?
That what I'm honing in on is something that's out of the norm, something unique, because animators have this tendency to make things move just for the sake of movement, because that's what you're supposed to do. But when you're able to capture somebody's feeling with very little movement, and sometimes it's just the way their face looks, the way their face doesn't move, the way their eyes kind of screen the room, these little things for an observer, you know what they're feeling and you know what they're going through, but they're doing so little. And sometimes as an animator, you want to be very clear with what you're trying to communicate. So you go very big and you go very like very typical, very kind of like same gesture that you've seen in a million movies, and that's what you want to stay away from. And so you're trying to find the life in something that's like very I guess you want, I mean it could be, it doesn't have to be subtle. It just you want to find something unique, something distinct, something that you feel like when you see it's like, oh yeah, I know exactly what's happening there. Even if it's not clear, something that's like that makes you recall like seeing somebody do the same thing and you know exactly what they're going through. So it's this is why observation is so important, is that you want to you just want to just get a collection of like people's reactions and how they are, just a collection of facial expressions and nervous tics and these little things that make people people. And and the more you have that to draw from, the less you're going to go with something that's very expected and very, you see somebody met, like what you don't want is to animate characters like a baby. When a baby's mad, they're just like, "Mm." That's not because even though it's universal and you understand what's happening, it's not interesting. But if somebody is sad and they just do it all with just the way they look in the, like at scanning the room, or just a little tick with their mouth or something, that's just a lot more interesting, and it just always makes for just more appealing animation. So I think that yeah, so basically, yeah, it goes back to observation, which is that you want to find something clear, but not very obvious, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, what you're saying makes so much sense in terms of just really examining all the subtle nuances of, an eyebrows raised and what does that
Right,
mean?
exactly.
And really kind of capturing that. Now, I'm curious, since it sounds like you have really become adept at kind of studying people, and their facial cues and their nonverbals as a way to enhance your art and your work. Do you feel like that's also been an asset for understanding people just in your everyday life, your personal life, reading where they are emotionally, or even understanding yourself and the way you carry yourself?
Um, this is unfortunate, but no, there's no correlation. I mean, I'll be honest about that. Is that it's I don't think it helps me understand my own psychology or anybody else's any better. I can just observe somebody. I mean, I find that interesting, but in terms of learning how to deal with people, I don't think that's I don't know, a skill that I've gained from being an animator.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's almost like all of that observation is so fruitful professionally, but you're able to maybe turn it on and off.
Um, how do you mean?
So let's say you're going to a party, a neighborhood
Mm.
party. You're not necessarily saying, I'm going to survey everybody and kind of capture, you're able to just relax and enjoy the personal experience without kind of scrutinizing everything, as a way to kind of understand those facial nonverbals.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I don't I only do that when that's kind of my intention. Like I go sketch at coffee shops a lot, or I just sit outside and I sketch people. And lately I've been painting, and I paint from my own photographs. So I like to just try to capture just moments. And so it's kind of like if that's what I'm out to do, then that's what I do. Otherwise, it's not like I can't help it, but I can't. If I keep looking at this person to try to study what they're doing, it's not quite like that. It's like it's more like an intended thing. Like this is okay. I'm here. This is my sketch session. I'm just gonna stare. I mean, and that takes some skill as well, because people don't really like to be sketched and to be photographed, and so it's like us. I think I've been doing it for so long. I just you find little ways to try to hide what you're doing, and yeah, you don't want to be creepy about it, but that's the only way to really do this is that you have to catch people when they don't know they're being watched, and this is when they act natural, and this is when you get all the gold, all the really good stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so interesting. Do you ever watch your work and say, "Oh, that character is the person from the coffee shop that was eating his sandwich in an aggressive way?" Or do you find maybe yourself or your friends in the characters? Or would you say it's almost like a composite? Your characters are a composite of many different observations that you've made.
I would say so. It's probably more of a subconscious thing that it's just kind of like uh, I guess I kind of like I've had people say they look at my animation, they say that's you, like that's how you act. But like for me, I don't, I try not to be just myself when I'm trying to create reference for these characters. But I mean, you can't really help that. You're you, and this is but some people, I used to have animators I worked with that would say they would look at my shot, they would say that is I could just watch this and know that it was you who'd animated it. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Because and then I see that in other people too. But I guess when you like sometimes you draw from something so specific, and usually that comes from just watching, like I usually it's from like watching YouTube videos. If I'm trying to find something very specific, I'll watch hours of videos just waiting for that one moment. And then once I have it, it's like, oh, okay, there it is. That's what I'm trying to try to trying to communicate. That's a gesture I'm trying to, bring to this character. Um, but yeah, so it does happen sometimes where there will be a certain acting bit, a certain gesture. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember where I found that. Oh, I remember seeing this person do that before. But it's at the end, it's sometimes your work becomes a Frankenstein of just all these different references, and what you're trying to do is just to blend it all together into one natural performance that when people watch, it's just all they just see is the performance and just the emotions, and not not see beyond that. And that's the trick. That's I guess that's the goal.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Something that made me pause when you've received feedback that this is you. Somebody will see your work and say, "This is you." I wasn't sure if they meant this is your work, like this
Mhm.
piece has your signature stamped onto it, or they meant
Mhm.
literally, this is you. Like you've incorporated mannerisms of yourself into this character.
Both. Yeah, I think sometimes it refers to both. And but I think that because we do use ourselves as reference so much that it's like, it's one of that they're kind of referring to the same thing, that like I'm seeing you through this character, and because of that, I know it's your work. So it's I always wondered about that if this is how animation, I mean, this was years ago, like when I was kind of new, that if this is people are kind of everybody reacts to things differently. And if you have this people kind of creating their own choices for one character, some movies will have 100 animators, and everybody's animating the main character, and can like this group of artists kind of like create something that feels cohesive, that feels like one person, and not just a bunch of different artists giving a different take on what this character is. And yeah, that comes down to the job of the supervisor to create to keep consistency and basically, I mean, this is the main, I think one of the main jobs, not the main job of a supervisor, is to take all the talent on your team and make it just feel like one unit, just one piece of work. Of course, you're going to get certain shots that are done by amazing animators that's going to stand out. But at the end of the day, you want your movie to feel like it was all created. I mean, not created at all. You just want to feel like these are living, breathing creatures and characters. But it's a challenge, and I've definitely been on productions where there is less consistency, and sometimes we're just as animators, we're very critical of the work that we're doing. So sometimes you notice and you see things like, this is like doesn't feel right. Feel like it's inconsistent with how the character would act. But then once it's all done and you see on the big screen, it's just kind of like, you're just over analyzing that. For the general audience, it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't take much to make it all work together. But yeah, when you're in it, you become a little bit more critical about these things. And um, but yeah, that's got what the
Yeah.
question was that you asked.
What you're saying is really interesting in terms of I can see how it would be really the supervisor role of making sure it's not like a patchwork quilt and
Right.
to compartmentalize and everything's fluid and streamlined. That seems like that would be, a feat in and of itself.
Oh,
And I'm
absolutely.
wondering, what about so I hear what you're saying in terms of you have that critical eye when you're on a, when you're doing a movie. And that makes sense. You're very conscientious, you have a strong work ethic. But do you also carry that same critical eye? Let's say you're watching a movie. Can you tell the behind the scenes and the fluidity of a movie that you're watching just for enjoyment?
Um, sometimes there are certain movies where I marvel at like the artists, just the quality of the work and just the style and just the choices that sometimes it takes me away from actually just watching the movie. There was this movie that came out in 2018, animated movie, Into the Spider-Verse, which is in animation. It was groundbreaking. It was something that has never been done before. Nobody's ever seen before. It had a very, very just raw and just very like the style was so different. And because before that, everything with animation, the gold standard was always Pixar and Disney, and everybody pushed to have the quality and the style kind of replicate that. And then comes this movie where it took all that and just ripped it, just created a whole different definition of appeal and interesting and fun animation. And then now everybody's trying to copy that style. So sometimes when something like that comes along, I definitely, it takes me out of just enjoying the movie because I'm just trying to study and just take in everything. And it's I have a lot of friends that worked on that movie, and yeah, I mean, it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of thrown away work. It's a lot of just redos and just rethinking a lot of things. And it's like one of those stories of a production in terms of just how grueling it was. And and here's something like that. It's completely, like expected that you're going to do something new and interesting that is gonna take yeah, it's not gonna be so straightforward. It's not gonna be an easy production. But yeah, I don't, sadly, I don't watch that many animated movies anymore. I mean, but there's animation and everything now. But I think that my need to study things has kind of disappeared a bit because I think now it's just, I don't know. I mean, I'm still passionate about animation, but I just don't look at these things the same way I used to. So I'm able to just
Mhm.
kind of enjoy things a little bit more. But I think it's interesting. It's an interesting time because I think there's going to be, people are trying to break out of the mold and do things that are just unique and just and just trying to capture people's attention again. And I think it's so I think the last few years there've been some interesting work, and I think that there's going to be more of that. And I think it's starting to bring my interest back again to just like to try to watch everything that gets released. And I don't know. Yeah, I used to be such an animation nerd that I will watch every single thing that came out. I would never miss a movie, and now it's yeah, it's a little different.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so interesting because to hear the way you watch movies, and now you're saying I'm trying to relax and enjoy them more when I do watch them. And it's interesting because I feel like now, after talking to you, I'll watch them different and try to have more of an appreciation for just all the work and behind the scenes instead of being sucked into the movie, have more of an appreciation of all the kind of blood, sweat, and tears that went into it. And it's also really interesting for me to hear you talk about when new trends come onto the scene and how you're really inspired and like awe-stricken when you see those. Um, when you see, let's say, a completely different way of animating, what goes through your mind? Are you thinking, "Oh, I want to do that," or are you thinking, I'd love to do something different in the same vein that this is different. I want to now give myself permission to take risks.
I definitely get inspired to work. Sometimes I see something that's really different. I get inspired, and I for me, my career, I haven't had a lot of stability because I kind of chase projects a little bit. I jump from company to company just whenever something comes along and I know the studio's working on it, and so then I'll contact them and I'll say you need any help, and so that's kind of it hasn't been like that throughout, but there's been a lot of projects where I'll just say, okay, when I'm done with this job, I'm going to go straight for that one. I'm gonna try to get into that studio, work on this movie. So yeah, so I do get inspired, and I think that I think one of the things I take a lot of pride in is that I've worked in a lot of different styles of animation, like realistic, in live action, like visual effects, where things are just they're basically it's like it's the style is realism, and from that to something super wacky and cartoony. So I wouldn't say that I excel in any of those, but I think I'm competent to be able to work on all different styles. And to me, at the end of the day, for me, I just that's what if I can do that, if I can keep doing that, it's I think it's what keeps me content and just kind of inspired in the field, is that I like to take on something that I'm not really familiar with, and then kind of throughout the project just feel myself learn and grow and be able to figure it out. Because like right now I'm working on another Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, which is more of like a cartoony style, and it is difficult and it's been challenging, but the team that have been trusting me with some really challenging and difficult work, and that's all I want to be able to just take on something I'm not familiar with, and at that and just throughout the production become more proficient and just really like absorb that style and just the work everybody else around me is doing, and just feel like at the end of the production, I feel like I have that in my arsenal now. Now I can go find another project with maybe with this similar style that's going to be fun. So yeah, I think maybe the fact that I think I've been able to find pretty consistent work without being like long term anywhere. I've been very lucky with that. So that's kind of my approach, to work. It's just I try to find what a company that's doing something interesting, and if the timing works, and if they like my work, and if we can, end up working together, that's always I feel like that's always a win. Like and I've been lucky to have consistent work all these years to always be able to do that.
Yeah, I think that's really impressive. And I think it's really neat the way you're talking about almost seizing a challenge and being able to forge new territory. Something maybe is unfamiliar and you really relish that challenge and you enjoy kind of testing your boundaries and developing new skills. And I think that takes a lot of courage. And I think courage is a staple in success. You also mentioned that you haven't had a lot of stability, and I wonder if you can talk about that. By stability or instability, do you mean that there's just constant movement, like you're going from project to project, as opposed to maybe being in the same in the same place for a prolonged period of time?
Um, so since the beginning, since I had my first job in 2006 in Dallas, I lived in Dallas for a year. After that, I moved to New York for a year and a half. Then I moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico for 3 years, and then to Vancouver for 6 years. And now I'm in Montreal, and I've been here for 7 years. So within that, each place, more or less, I basically have been following kind of like, especially since moving to Canada, I've been kind of following where the hub has been shifted to because the tax breaks and everything, companies shift around a lot. And, like the work used to all be in California, and that hasn't been the case for 15 plus years. And now a lot of work's in, there was more in Canada. And because of the tax breaks and some of that has kind of gone away. So there's been more work in Australia, in UK. So I think that there are people who are able to land some, just permanent jobs, but just the way the industry works, especially if you work in film, everything is just kind of like project based. So, I think on average, I work two to three companies a year, 2 to 3 studios per year. And last year, I was doing proof. I was living in Costa Rica, and so I did full freelance, all remote freelance, small projects, and I worked on 6, 7 projects, 6, 7 companies, and um, so it's something that kind of goes with the territory. And like I said, some people get lucky, and they get some, studios will always have a skeleton crew, or if the studio is successful enough, they could have like a team that just goes from project to project. And but I think that's you have to be pretty good, pretty lucky. And I guess I sacrifice just that to me has never been appealing, and maybe because I don't have like any dependents. I don't have any kids that rely on that paycheck, and I think so far I've been able to make a really good living animating, and it's giving me that freedom to just keep moving around, to not have to stick somewhere because okay, I have insurance. I'm gonna have like I have 401k, all this stuff that I think maybe is more important if the life situation is a little bit different. But for me, I've never really cared about that. So I'm just more about just trying to find interesting work. And so the instability to a degree is also kind of my doing. But for the most part, it's just how the industry works, especially in film. But in video games, it's a little bit different. And this is an area of animation I have no experience with, and I'm about to start my first video game job in September. It's so this is another new thing that I'm surprised that I'm getting this opportunity, because right now even the video game industry is very very there's slight instability, mass layoffs, and everything. So um, it was kind of surprising that they would take a chance on somebody without experience in that specific field. But I don't know. I think with my experience, it helps, and it's the type of project that they're going to be, the game that they're working on. They kind of need the like the style of work that I've done, kind of some of that experience. So this is going to be venturing into completely new territory for me, and so yeah, I guess it's this instability is what some people will make some people quit the industry, and there's been a lot of that, and especially the last 3 4 years have been really really rough. Like like COVID was gave like a boost to animation, believe it or not. Everybody was working from home, and studios were putting out more content than ever. I think because of COVID, because people were at home so much that they wanted more stuff, and so there was a big push for that. And then when that kind of died down, uh, it kind of like the last couple of years have just been really rough and for the industry. And I've seen many people just leave entirely. LinkedIn can be a really sad place to visit because you just see story after story of people just they can't take the instability, they can't be unemployed anymore, so they have to just move on to something else. And so yeah, it's for the most part, this is the point, this is the kind of aspect of the industry that people get discouraged by, is the instability. And it's like, and I don't, this is how it works, I guess, because it's like like these animation studios, they are struggling as well. I mean, like studios are closing down left and right, and sometimes it just takes for one or two projects to go badly or go over budget or be late, and then all of a sudden it just trickles down to everything else. And then it's like a studio can only afford one or two bad projects and then they have to close down. So it's just an unstable, it's just very insecure kind of industry. And uh yeah, it's rough. And I think I've just been I think once we hit like that a few years ago when it started getting really bad, I mean I think I was lucky that I had enough experience to just kind of keep getting work. But yeah, it was very depressing for a little while. I just saw a lot of friends just kind of, just struggling just to find work. So I think it's if the stability is what you're looking for, I think this might not be a good industry to go into.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. Firstly, congratulations on the new job that you're stepping
Thank
into
you.
in
Thank
the
you.
video game industry. That sounds really exciting. It also sounds really unfortunate that you're seeing how people are impacted by some of the instability of the field and how it's impacting people's lives as well as it sounds like the industry as a whole. But kind of within that, you use the word freedom at one point. It sounds like in an unstable environment, there might be some perks that are there. One thing that stands out to me is just how adaptable you are, not just going from project to project, but from region to region.
Mm.
And I'm wondering if you see it that way, if you see that there are some maybe unstable aspects, but there are also some maybe perks to that lifestyle as well.
Yeah, I used to see that as a perk, and I used to kind of like jumping around and moving to different city every few years. I remember when I had the offer to go to Albuquerque, it was with Sony Imageworks, and their main hub at the time was in LA, and they were hiring people to go to LA and also to New Mexico. And I remember when they made an offer to me for New Mexico. A lot of my friends turned it down because they didn't want to go to New Mexico. They want to go to LA. But I jumped at that immediately. I was like, that's so awesome. Like, I never thought, working in animation, I would be able to go live in the desert. I mean, in Albuquerque. And it was three of the some of the best years of my life, living in New Mexico. I made some amazing, like really good close friends. Like, and I think for some people, that's the drawback. Nobody wants. I mean, especially if you have a family, nobody wants to uproot their family and do this every few years. And I remember when I first got to Vancouver in 2011. The industry was not quite so big there yet. It was starting to grow, and work wasn't consistent. And I remember meeting people from Australia, from UK, from Europe, and after they're done with the project, after living in Vancouver for 6 7 months, they brought their kids, their family, and they had to go back. So it's kind of like that stuff. I mean, everybody knows how draining moving is. I mean, just moving within your own town is draining. To move to a different country, a different city, to a completely different. I could see that being a very like a discouraging thing for to be in the industry. But for me, I mean, all the way until I moved here, I think I was up for that. And my only regret is that I never went to Australia or New Zealand or UK. I mean, not that I can't still go, but that kind of part of me is it's kind of gone. Like now, I just like, I like staying put. I have my place here. I've lived here for the last 6 years, and pretty settled now. So I mean, if I had to move again because of work, I'll do it because it's work, but it's not something I look forward to anymore.
Yeah, no, I appreciate hearing kind of how um, in different stages of life, maybe the stimulation of change has meant something different to you. I think that's really thoughtful and really interesting. And let's go back to what we started talking about at the beginning when you were talking about being an observer. Um, I wonder if you could kind of flesh out what you think being an animator involves. I hadn't really thought about maybe this like understanding psychology or really keying into some of those, social behaviors. And clearly being creative, I would imagine having technical skills are also part of, the success of somebody. But what do you see as maybe some of those ingredients into what would be a successful um, animator?
Um, I would say I think, I mean, in the beginning is patience because I think good understanding animation and good animation takes time. It takes time as like, as your like path overall to becoming developing your eye, developing how you see things, and also just sitting and working on a single shot. All these things, it's just you kind of have to just like let time help you make it happen. So it could be frustrating. I remember in film school, I used to have a little note on top of my monitor that said animation is hard. And people gave me shit for it because they didn't know what it meant. They were like, why do you look at that every day? And like, it's not discouraging. I say, no, it's encouraging because when I'm sitting here animating and nothing is working, I like to remind myself that it's hard. It takes time. That it's just like it's not going to happen overnight. And I went to an immersive like kind of 1 year program, so that was even. I mean, that was the toughest year of my career was being in school because I was 25. I kind of like I switched careers. I moved from cooking to animation, and I felt like I was late already. So I picked the school because it was immersive. So I'm trying to learn all this stuff in 1 year, which, I mean, I've seen a lot of really, really good animators. They're just in and out of, 1 year school and they're just out, come out just animating, they're just rock stars. And I mean, I did okay. I came out and I was able to have decent enough work to start working right away. But I mean, just that year is just trying to make sense of animation. It was tough. And I think I have to remind myself that it's a process. And I think that I was still, pretty passionate, like in terms of just wanting to learn and just discover and just learn new techniques, to see how people just kind of do things and learn from them. I think I kind of, after maybe a few years in the industry, kind of lost that a little bit. And I became just content just working. But I think what it takes is you have to be hungry. You have to be passionate. You have to like absorb everything around you. And you see somebody doing something that's amazing. I think you want to just kind of like try to figure out their mindset, figure out what they do that's so different, you know? And I think I used to have more of that. And then I kind of, after a while, it's just like, oh, well, it's just a job. I just want to just animate and go home and watch TV. And but I think during my years at school and a few years after, I mean, because right away, right after school, I wanted to work in feature film. So when I had a job in Dallas, I was working for a smaller studio, being animating and being a generalist. And but I was working at night. I was working on my own stuff, trying to beef up my portfolio to really like get into feature film. And then when I did, there was like another grueling year where I feel like, okay, I feel like I'm back in film school. I'm learning all over again. This studio, when I worked on Horn Hears a Who at Blue Sky Studio, that was 2007. And I just remember that I was actually, I think that year and the 1 year film school are the two of the toughest years in animation that I've had because that's when I was hungry. And that, because of that, I was frustrated. And that frustration, I think it pushed me into, it kind of really upped my skill. And at the same time, it came with it came at a price because I mean, there were, I was, I'm not proud of this, but when I was working on Horn Hears a Who, I was struggling so much and I couldn't sleep at night because I was just replaying my work in my head, just trying to figure out how to. So I wasn't sleeping and I was drinking, I was taking cough syrup just to go to sleep. And then, I mean, that stuff works. It knocks you out, but the next day you wake up, you feel you've been hit by a bus. And I was on that cycle because my brain would not shut down. Because when I'm at home, I'm just thinking about my work. Like maybe I should just go back to the studio. Maybe I'll just go back for another hour, and then I can, I'll sleep in a little bit tomorrow. And it was, I mean, I haven't experienced that kind of stress since. And I think that, but that was that for sure. I mean, after at the end of that movie, I felt like I was a different artist. I learned so much, and I think that that's what it takes. Every production, you need to be just hungry to just, just to really be immersed in the movie and learn everything you can and just, yeah, just get something out of it. Lead that production a different artist, a different animator. So it's
Wow.
yeah,
So
it's
much to unpack there. So much to unpack. No, so many interesting things you mentioned. I do want to come back and talk about your journey in cooking and kind of the path that brought you here and how you're still nurturing that interest of cooking. But in terms of what you described, traits like being hungry, patient, um, being passionate. I think that that's really interesting. But what stands out to me, a couple things really stand out. First of all, I think that it's so interesting that you kind of link together being hungry and frustrating. It's almost like they go in tandem, as you're talking about, that first movie and being in school and feeling frustrated, but also hungry. And it almost like felt like through your description that the two go together and really inform each other, which I think is really fascinating. And another thing that fascinates me that you said, Pon, is that mantra that you had of animation is hard. And what stands out to me about that is oftentimes when we think about people maybe having like a little sticky note of encouragement, we think of something positive, like you got this or you can do it. And it's almost like you were using the truth that this is hard as a way to kind of get you through those moments.
Yeah, it's basically just telling myself to just go a little easy, just go a little easy
Yeah.
on yourself. That it's not gonna happen overnight. If it did, it wouldn't be worth a thing. So, and I think that back to the hunger and frustration thing is that if I was not hungry, I wouldn't be frustrated or as frustrated. Sometimes maybe yeah, sometimes I feel like my work could be better. I'll be a little frustrated about that, but the frustration I'm talking about is like I was felt like I was being exposed, like I was out of my element, that I didn't belong, and I rarely get those kind of feelings anymore because it's just kind of like I just feel like um, sometimes you struggle. I mean, every shot has its own challenges. Every project has its own challenges, and yeah, you'll have moments of doubt. But at the end, I feel like you just know that you're gonna get through it. With enough time, with enough guidance, you have a good supervisor, you get good feedback, you'll get there. And I think the frustration I used to feel was more of the fact that I don't see the other side. I don't see like how it's so far from like what I'm understanding at the moment, that it's just that's what's frustrating, that it's just like just doing this, just I just feel like I'm just trying to force something in that's never gonna happen. And yeah, it's I think that I don't know, I sometimes I wish that uh I don't know what I could have done different, but somehow I became um comfortable a little bit too soon, a little too early in animation. And you know, I have some friends that one particular that has been doing it longer than I have, and incredible animator, one of the best I've ever known. And he talks about animation now like he did when he was like young, that he hasn't lost any of that drive, and he's like he loves to learn, he loves to like talk to people about animation, and I do to a degree, but yeah, I think that you know, some people they just have like the talent, and then they just have the ability to just kind of keep improving. And but I think that it's also sometimes it's also a very conscious thing. You have to decide like, I don't understand certain things, and I'm not good at certain things, so I want to try to really figure that out. And that's yeah, I think that's important to keep growing, to keep being better.
Yeah, I think those are all really great insights. And again, kind of looking at the hunger frustration ratio, um, it sounds like you no longer have the frustration because time gives you perspective and lets you know kind of that there will be a final outcome and it will be rewarding. Do you feel like that since the frustration has tapered off a bit and you use the word comfort, do you feel like that's impacted that hunger level as well?
Uh, I think so. I think also with the hunger, I guess it's I guess my drive is a little bit different than people I've been around, which is that, you know, after you work in on a couple productions, you know, you work from junior to mid to senior, and then you become a lead, and then eventually you become a supervisor or animation director. And I think that, you know, to I think that that's the progression that I just never, it never appealed to me, because I mean, I've taken on some leadership roles, and for me, it's like I found it's, you know, there's positive and negatives, but at the end of the day, I think what I enjoy the most is just being left to work, and I like being an artist, and I like what I like is being asked to do something challenging, and just kind of letting me, you know, letting me do my thing. And so for me, the climb isn't the same as most people. And you know, like most of my friends that I started with, they're all supervisors now. And um, I guess for me, just in those positions, I don't feel like I'm using the best. It's like the production's not getting the best of me. I think the best of me is as an artist. And I think COVID kind of maybe has had an effect on that, because I was a lead for a couple of projects during COVID, and it just felt like just, you know, just doing this stuff remotely. I didn't have that collaborative kind of like, you know, like environment, something that you can like you can just like talk over things. And it just that experience kind of I don't know, it kind of made me rethink my path, and what kind of decisions I wanted to take. And so like the hunger for me now is this, I just like to keep working on cool stuff, and I like to just be trusted to do difficult things. And if there's you know, right now I think that's it's this project that I'm currently on is kind of like, it's giving me all of that. It's like a very difficult style, very difficult project. And you know, the production and my supervisor, they've been giving me just really difficult stuff to work on. And you know, I just kind of retreat to my desk, and I won't talk to anybody for a couple of days, and I'll come out and just, you know, just trying to basically kind of live up to this senior animator, you know, title, and with the experience I have. So it's yeah, I guess it's now I just, you know, if I can just keep doing that, then for me that's I'm good doing that until the end of my career.
Yeah, you make a really good point. I think sometimes people make the assumption that once you become advanced in your career trajectory, that leadership is the next step in that path. And in many respects, I feel like leadership is almost a completely different path that yes can overlap, but it really is a different skill. And I love that you're, instead of moving in that direction, you're following your heart and you're following that creative path. You're taking risks. You're, really challenging yourself, which sounds like a really, really meaningful path. Um, Honing in on the word hunger that you use to describe, that psychological feeling of hunger, and using it as a segue to talk about your culinary uh, your culinary interests, and starting off as a chef, and still even now with your YouTube channel, Late Chow. Can you talk a little bit about that interest? And do you see it connected in any way to movie making in terms of maybe are you using the same creative juices, or do you see them as two separate
uh,
experiences?
I don't see much of a connection. I mean, they're both, they're skills that takes a long time, I think, to develop. Uh, I guess, working in the kitchen is kind of similar, where it has to be a kind of a, it you have to work well with your team, and that's same with animation. But I guess with cooking, when I was cooking professionally, that teamwork, that cohesive, environment, it's more immediate. Where, an animation is more of something that you just you come up with a plan and you go back and you kind of do things. A couple of days later, you get back together. But in the kitchen, you have to be collaborative and you have to work well together right that moment. And every problem that comes up is something that needs to be solved immediately, which is very different than in animation. And ultimately, that kind of stress was what kind of took me out of cooking professionally. Because when I started, I mean, I had, it's the same thing. I had so much passion. All I did, I worked and I read books and I watched shows. I just wanted to absorb everything about cooking. And it was I mean, this is like when I was about 20 years old. I was actually, at the time, I was going to university. I was going to James Madison and studying animation. And I was, at that time, I didn't care about animation at all. All I did was watch Food Network and I cooked for my roommates. And I got so immersed in that. And then right when I finished just to finish. And then right after that, I didn't think about animation. I went straight to, I begged for a job at an Italian restaurant, and then I cooked for the same chef for about 3 years. And I mean, um, it was an experience. I mean, what I got out of it was I learned how to cook, but it also showed me that it's not an environment that I wanted to spend all my like, if you're when you're a cook and you're starting out, you're living, and that the work is, it's late nights, it's weekends, and you live in the kitchen. And I just, yeah, I think after a few years, I still love cooking more than ever, but I never saw it as being something I could do day in, day out until, I'm 60 years old. And it's the same thing, you go through the progression, you cook on the line for a couple of years, and then you become sous chef, and you become a head chef, and then after a while you're just in the back just ordering food and managing the schedule, and you're not really dealing with food anymore. So it's kind of similar. There's a hierarchy. It's kind of similar to animation. And but yeah, it's just that life. I think ultimately it was just a little bit too chaotic for me. And I just remember the last year before I kind of gave up cooking professionally, I was all I could think about was like, it would be nice if I was just animating, sitting in a nice air conditioned, room, just listening to music and just clicking some buttons on a computer, sitting, and it's just yeah. So all that I hate to say it. I mean, I always had a lot of passion for animation, but at that moment, that was the driving force. Was that I just wanted to just say it's kind of simpler life, which is it's kind of ironic because I wanted my weekends back, I wanted my nights back, but in animation, you work those hours too. So it's not I
Yeah.
never really escaped that.
I think
Yeah.
that's interesting because in both fields, you've mentioned kind of unconventional lifestyles that you have to really adapt to and adhere to. And it's also interesting as you compare the two fields to compare and contrast the concept of patience with animation. You know,
Mhm.
you have to be patient that something will unfold with time and, you know, a lot of work. Whereas with cooking, you know, it's almost you need that immediacy. It's almost the opposite. You know, somebody wants a meal and they want it, you know, within 10 minutes. And so there's a lot of pressure in
Right.
different ways. So that is really interesting just to kind of hear you compare and contrast those two fields. But
It-
one of the things that really stands out to me, Pon, and kind of as we kind of come to a close with our conversation, is just how absorbed you become with whatever it is that's on your plate. No pun intended.
mm.
Um, but whether it's cooking or whether it's animation, in terms of really just immersing yourself, and you used the word passion before, I can see how really passionate and really um, just engaged in the field you are, whatever you're doing. And I think that certainly comes across and translate in the final product. And so it really is just such a pleasure to hear you talk about your work and really identify different traits and characteristics and things that I never thought about when I thought about working in the movie industry or the cooking
Mm.
industry. So I am
Right.
just super appreciative of all that you shared today. And I know, you know, I have a lot of thinking just in terms of really ingesting all of your pearls of wisdom. So thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. You know, like I said, I'm about to hit my 20-year mark of animation, and it's kind of nice. I haven't like tried to kind of just sum up like the career like this in the conversation. So it's really nice. It's really nice talking to you and like just kind of talking about this. So it's yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you
that
so
is
much.
really neat. Congratulations on your 20-year mark.
Oh,
You
thank
have
you.
so much to be proud of. And, you know, I know that looking at your resume and just hearing about all that you contributed to the field and how much joy you brought to people's lives is super meaningful. So thank you so much, Pon. This was really a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.